Tales of Mithrym.
Den of Thieves, read by Skye Part 10, Bog and Brier. "So what's the plan?" Derval asked as they made their way through the town gates. The sun was high in the sky now and riding its way up towards noon. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of sawing and hammering as the townsfolk began altering the defenses. Elvin placed the kobold down on the road. It began squirming and pulling on the ropes and shackles that bound it. "Hold steady," Elvin commanded as he knelt down and began untying the rope. He left the shackles in place and tied one end of the rope to them. Then, holding the other end tight in his hand, he stood up. "Well," he began, "now it is a matter of finding the others." "What, and you think he'll just take us there?" Derval scoffed. "Not exactly." Elvin smiled and lowered his voice conspiratorially. "But it seems to me that this little chap will find a way to slip free at some point, and then we just need to keep track of him." "Oh." Ducky tapped the side of his nose. "Got it." Elvin kicked the kobold in its back, and it leapt up, yowling. "Come on," he ordered. "Quick march." The small creature turned and looked at him. It smiled a wide smile, then began to run. Elvin held the rope as tight as he could as he ran to keep up. The creature, for all its small stature, seemed to have the speed of a fox. They continued along the road and up the hill for some way, keeping true for some time, until suddenly a yank on the rope drew Elvin sideways into a hedge. He fumbled, but held fast to the rope as he followed the kobold into the woods. Behind him, Derval and Ducky did all they could to keep up too, jumping and springing their way through the brush and shrubs. Elvin panted as he pushed himself to keep pace with the small creature, several times getting soaked by sudden streams and puddles. The kobold was laughing as it went, cackling a high-pitched squeak as it hopped along. "Not far, not far," it shouted as it went. "What?" Elvin gasped, panting harder as he spoke whilst running. "You do not mean to say you are actually bringing us to your home?" All of a sudden, the kobold stopped. Elvin fell flat on his face as he continued on, tripping on the remains of a fallen tree. The kobold pulled at the rope and it dropped from Elvin's grasp. The small creature leapt up onto a nearby stump and creased up laughing as it watched Elvin push himself up from the mud. "You foul creature! You spawn of emu! I will kill you if you—" Elvin picked himself up as he began to fill with anger. "Stop!" Derval called out from behind him. "Why?" Elvin rubbed at his face to clear away the mud from his eyes. "I do not suppose he has actually brought us to the others." The kobold was laughing even harder. "Not to the other kobolds, no," came Ducky's voice. Elvin turned to look at them, then back to the kobold, then further on to the wood ahead. A massive brown bear roared at him. Elvin stumbled backwards and reached for his sword. His hand, caked in brown sludge, slipped from the hilt. Ducky ran in, his own sword held high, and brought it down hard at the beast. The bear reared up as the blade came down, missing it by inches and burying itself in the ground. The kobold hopped down and made to run off towards the trees. As it did, though, it too was suddenly pulled hard to the ground. Behind it, Derval was now holding the rope. "Not so fast," she said, as she wound the rope around her hand. Once she had it firmly, she held out her other hand and clicked her fingers. It was a hard job with all that was going on, but she bent her mind and looked at the seam of magic in the air around her. She could see the frantic figures of Elvin and Ducky, the odd distorted pattern of the kobold, and the huge lumbering hulk of the bear. She focused hard, and a spark formed in her hand. With a flick of her wrist, she sent it towards the bear where it caught the creature's fur, causing it to yelp in pain. She screamed loudly at the creature, and it lowered itself to the ground, rolling slightly to extinguish the flame. Then it turned and bounded off into the woods. "I suppose you think that was funny." Elvin turned on the kobold. It had stopped laughing, though, and was now pulling hard at the rope that Derval was holding. Elvin drew his sword and once again held it to the kobold's throat. It stopped protesting and stood quite still. I say we dispense with pretense. He held it firmly in his gaze. Will you take us to your home? The kobold smiled. Oh, it exclaimed. Of course. Yes, I will. It was just about to run ahead again, but Dervil tugged hard on the rope and pulled it over. It got up and dusted itself off. Walk, she commanded. We've had enough of your tricks. The going was a lot slower now, but they wound their way through the trees, down the hills and up steep slopes, turning this way and that. The sun rose high over them and began working its way down into the afternoon, before they saw any sign of structure or building. After several hours, though, they could make out the definite shape of a wall. A stone wall, in fact. At last, Elvin exclaimed. Right. Let us take this slowly, though. I do not want us to be overrun before we have a chance to scope it out. He made his way through the bushes and down towards the structure. Beneath his feet, a twig snapped. The sound echoed all around. He chided himself for such a simple mistake. Who goes there? A voice came from nearby. Elvin froze. For the love of the crafters! Ducky exclaimed. Dervil tugged at the rope as the kobolds started hopping and laughing. Around the corner came the town guard. They had come full circle.
Tales of Mithrym are written by Jimmy Clephane. Mithrym is a fantasy world built for the Dungeon Room role-playing game system. To find out more about the world of Mithrym, or to try out the game, go to www.mithrym.com.